is an oral history interview from Mystic Seaport Museum. The narrator is Mr. Elmer Millenbach. The interviewer is Fred Calabretta. The date is June 1st, 1989, and we're at Mr. Mlllenbach's home in Detroit, Michigan.
I made a set of conventional skates with T-iron, and oh God, they were great. They were so light, and I made them a little bit longer than the DN plan called for, and they went like crazy. And oh God, that boat would go. Well, then I took it up where the racing boats were, and I couldn't sail with the DNs, but I could sail with E-boats, which were, we had boats in the Detroit Ice Yacht Club fleet, and they invited me to race with them. Well, of course, it was unofficial. I didn't belong to the club because that cost $3. And if you can imagine, I had $70, which was my life savings, doing without lunches or cheap lunches to save a few bucks here and there. And I didn't have a set of creepers. They cost $1.65. And so they invited me to, and it was a real light air day. And I was lined up with them, and it's amazing how, when I think of what I've done in iceboating, there were so many things that were being done wrong and poorly that nobody gave any thought. We used to have starting lines that were V-shaped, and they used to sail around a triangular course, which is all the ridiculous things. And, the second leg you're hanging on for dear life, and the first and third legs are making the boat go where it doesn't want to go. And that's where the skill came in, of course. And luckily I seem to be endowed with that. I don't know where I learned it. I don't remember learning. But anyway, the race started off, and everybody takes off, and I'm doing this on the ice. And finally I get the thing going. Well, hell, the race was almost half over before I got the boat going. Well, then I got going like crazy and passing a lot of boats, but nobody noticed me. Well, then later on in the season, I would get win a race, but that was because my boat was, I could start off with that thing like, I was the first boat up to the weather mark. Well, then coming downwind, they could, sail harder and get the boat with a good head of steam and keep laying off. And by the end of the race, well, maybe I'd be in third place. But I'd get lucky and win a race. Well, nobody thought too much about it because, like on a Saturday race, this was during the early part of the war, and a lot of guys were gone in service. And the ones that were left, well, this guy had to work on Saturday, and he wasn't there. And he was a potential winner, and so-and-so was had to work that day. He wasn't there, so we had to wait for a Sunday when everybody would be there. So finally Sunday came along in late February, and we're all lined up to start this first trophy race that I was going to be in. So there's a big cloud coming up, and you could see it was going to be a blizzard. And I'm yelling, hey, we can't start a race. Well, this cloud gets by, and then we can start. Well, they'd been waiting for a Sunday that they could race on all winter. So they wanted to get started, and who the hell's this guy trying to tell us what to do? So we started the race. And I was out in front with split tacks, and we were sailing a windward course. But the tack I was on, I got out in front, and I couldn't see the front of my boat. The snow was coming down just in torrents, and I could look behind me and see the boats following me, but I couldn't see where the hell I was going. So, geez, if we go much longer on this tack, we're going to run into shore. So how do I slow down to keep everybody from running into me? So I just kept going slower and slower and slower and pulling up higher and higher and higher into the wind. And finally, just about the time I got stopped, the snow stopped. Well, there were boats all over that lake, and nobody knew where the hell they were even, because, where did we start from? And if you get a wind shift during a snowstorm, you have no idea where you are. And unless you happen to hit a familiar spot on shore that you're familiar with. But anyway, on this particular race, we all congregate out there again, and it took about a half hour to get everybody squared around again. Now off we go. Well, by this time, I'm all primed up, and I'll get this race off anyway. But it was a 3-race series, and I took a second. Well, at the end of the race, the guy that won it says, "The hell with you guys, I'm watching this little green boat." So the next race, he was back in the fleet, and somebody else won it, but I was second again. So everybody knew I was there. And the final, I thought, boy, I'm really going to do it this time or die, and I schnockered them. At the end of the race, they all got around in the circle and down on their hands and knees, and we're doing this. And we got that on film. But that was, of course, the happiest day of my life. But then, of course, the war came, and I had to, Uncle Sam wanted me more than I wanted me, so I had to go. But when I got back, I put a springboard on the front of the boat, and of course, well, one of the first things I did was immediately that 12-pound mast broke. It just wouldn't. I had a 12-foot runner plank, and you could really horse that in and use that sail. And so I designed a mast for it. And it was about 6 inches fore and aft, and 1 7/8 thick, 2 pieces hollowed out, and inside halyard, of course. And nobody else had an inside halyard. But that mast added like 200 horsepower to the boat. Gee, it really would go then. And in my opinion, that was the best ice boat ever built, the best design, the best everything for what it was. It was as fast as the skeeters, and they would get me. I would average about third for a season of sailing, but I'd win one enough to always the first boat at the weather mark, always. And then when while I was in the service, I'm getting all these ideas of how to build a really super ice boat. And when I got out, I couldn't, materials weren't available. You couldn't buy a piece of plywood, marine plywood. And spruce was almost non-existent. I remember then we paid 70 cents a board foot for it in timbers. But then you'd have to take it someplace and have it resawed. And whoever was doing the resawing didn't know how to do it, and the thing would come out like a corkscrew. And by the time you had it planed down to what you wanted, you had grain going every which way. And when you started clamping laminations together, you didn't know what you were coming out with. But anyway, I figured, well, I can't build a new boat, but some of these ideas I got, I can apply to what I've got. So, first of all, I'm going to have to beef up that fuselage. So what I did was put a half-inch lamination on the outside of the side panels and taper them down at each end. And this was all by hand, of course, with a plane. And I designed a different rig and a new, wider mast. And the runners I had in mind were the ones with this T-section. I'd never seen anything like it before, but this was something that was born up here. And so I go to a so-called metallurgist, a guy that was going to weld these things up for me. And, oh, no problem, we can do this, we can do that, and so on. I said, well, how are you going to keep these things straight? Well, oh, that's my trade. So the idea was so good that two other guys wanted runners made, so I got 3 sets made up. My God, they looked like almost like corkscrews. You couldn't imagine the metals. I had the same material welded on each side for stiffness and with cutouts and the webs, so that the runner itself was its own chafing plate. You didn't have to have the big chocks and so on. So this was quite a thing, and you made the runner stiff. Day off work and go and see this guy and tell him how to straighten the damn runners. And he thought if a thing was bent, so you bend it the other way to get it well, but he wouldn't bend it the other way in the same place it was bent. See, so I'd have to stand there, tell him where it is. First of all, we got to get this thing straight before you go beyond straight. And so we went through 9 runners like this. It took the whole damn day. So anyway, I got them so they were usable at least. So, but anyway, then I made a 16-foot runner plank, an 18-foot mast. Well, I had 3 inches on top for my little top knot up there that was kind of a trademark. My God, I was only after about 2 miles an hour, to get the most out of what I had. And God, that thing went like crazy. And it just outshined anything on the ice. And not only that, it was controllable. That boat would go, was so well set up that as the runners got dull, well, even when they were sharp on real hard ice, that boat would drift. But like if you were on a starboard tack, it would go.
Side 2 of the original recording begins here.
As you'd be sliding around the mark sideways, you still had perfect control over where you were aiming it and take off. Instead of going around way out here, you could come in there and take off like that. So It was phenomenal. It was, but it still wasn't my idea of the ultimate iceboat, as I thought it then. But so a group came to me, well, actually Nub Sarnes and Hank Burkhardt, who were very prominent sailors, both iceboat and summer, and said, we want what you got, you know. We think this is the answer to iceboating, because we don't want to haul around these big clunkers that Hank threw out his back and one thing and another and put him out of commission. So he wanted something that they could handle. I mean, well, Cora used to help me with my boat and then lift it up on top of the car, and she was no Amazon, but it was handy, and it was so much easier to haul. Well, it was 21/8 with the springboard, and the other boats were 22 feet, and plus the springboard. So. That's another story, that springboard story. But anyway, I said, you know, I wanted to build a boat. I wanted to win everything all the time. And I was only winning about 3 or 4 guys' share besides myself, you know, and I wasn't satisfied with that. I wanted everything. So Nub says, well, wouldn't you, he says, if you build another boat, it would be bigger, wouldn't it? And I said, yes. And he said, well, we don't want a bigger boat. We want what you've got. So he said, wouldn't you sacrifice, you know, your dream of doing this, we all know you can do it, to make a lot of people happy? And so I thought, well, okay, so we formed this Wind Design Association, and I drew up the plans so that I'm not a naval architect, but I can draw a line, and I've got an eye for things. So.
And what year was that you talked to those two and that you?
That was 47. But anyway, I did the, well, I say in 1947 I won the you know, International Skidder Association World Championship, and I won it again in 1950 with my new boat. Everybody said this, I needed another Renegade like I needed a hull, and you know, but we would, there were some of these built commercially, and after I made the plans up, and we'd get them on the ice, and my boat would win. So they said, well, let's start trading boats. Well, they'd trade boats, but their boats were made for them, and mine was made for me. And they could sail my boat, but I couldn't sail their boat. You know, you get in there, you go to trim the sail, the boom's on your shoulder, and there's no place to go. So that's the best you can do. Well, anyway, they didn't have this set up right or that set up right, so whoever sailed my boat won the race. So, well, that damn thing is just magic, you know. And it wasn't fair for me to be racing them. So I had to build a new boat and start all over again with, the year I built the new boat, it was after we got this house. The house wasn't built then. So I had to wait for the house to be built, and we could get moved into it to start building the ice boat. I sold mine over in Canada when I won the first Canadian Open they had, and I had the Canadian Open for 9 years, and I won it 9 years straight. And so the guy that used to sponsor all the races over there wanted to buy that boat, and I didn't want to sell it, but I thought, well, that's the only way I'm going to get rid of it and build a new one to prove that I can do it again, you know, with another boat. So I built the new one here. In fact, did you get that stuff I sent just recently with all that? I think there was a brochure in it that was put out by that Cora's been sending out with plans and one thing and another. You didn't get it?
No.
Oh. Well, anyway, there was a fellow by the name of names escape me. Anyway, he was involved with, he was the writer for the local area writer for Yachting Magazine. And he had his own publication at that time. And we had yachting and aviation and he was trying all kinds of different things, I guess, and he used to take aerial photos and all kinds of things. But he had more iceboating information than anybody I ever heard of. He had pictures of boats from way back, with, for instance, a shifting runner plank on it. And he'd been to Hyde Park to see the famous icicle or whatever it was that Roosevelt had. And it turns out that this icicle is another minnow in a pond compared to what we have here. And you know, the debutante and the deuce are monsters, really monsters. So